Hello, everybody. This is Gino Johnson, CEO of Champions for Veterans, and I am so excited to hear from today's hero, Tony Zamora, and for him to be able to share his story and for us to be able to hear it. But thank you so much for listening to Convos of Heroes, where we hear stories from folks who are heroes, who've done amazing things, who have big hearts. Before we kind of get into Tony's story, I want to say hey to my dad. Hey, Dad, how you doing?
I am so excited today, man. We got a phenomenal American hero, Tony Joe Zamora, and I can't wait to hear. Let's get it to rocking and rolling, son.
Awesome. Perfect. Yes, sir. Same here. So yeah, let me tell you all about who Tony Zamora is, or Anthony Tony Joe Zamora. He's 20 years, been in the Air Force. He did 10 years active duty, and he's currently in the Air Force National Guard. He's done tours in Afghanistan and Operation Iraqi Freedom. While in the service, he's been in Air Force Tech Control and on long haul comms. So look forward to hearing more about that. He's been a community leader, and he's also ran for city council. He's also nicknamed, was it Albuquerque Superman?
Yeah.
So we got to hear why you're Albuquerque Superman, Tony. So love to get into that. But you can actually see more about Tony on www.az4nm.com. That's az4nm.com. I can't, I didn't serve. So I know a lot of times folks say Alpha, Bravo, all that. I wish I knew everything so I could use that. but his Instagram is also az_4_nm. So man, Tony, good to have you on with us today. How you doing, sir?
Better than most. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys having me on.
I love it, man. Happy to have you on. Thanks for joining on with us, man. So of course, what we do here, we love to hear your story. So tell us all who Tony Zamora is, or Tony Joe Zamora. Tell us who you are.
Yeah, so my birth name is Antonio Jose Miguel Zamora, but growing up as a military brat and in the 80s, everybody was named Anthony in my class, so we shortened it to Tony Joe, and been that ever since. Let's see, I've done 20 years now this year, and I'm a military brat as well. So both my parents were in the Air Force. Wow. I grew up all around the world. In middle school and high school, I went to South Florida. We moved with my mom there and settled down there. And so Fort Lauderdale is more or less, even though I only spent, a quarter of my life there now at this point. And then I turned 17 and got my mom to sign the line for me in 2002, and went ahead and enlisted. And yeah, here we are now, about to punch out, and currently in my civilian job. So I did 10 years active duty, and then 10 years in the Air National Guard. And so in the Air National Guard, you're what's called a citizen airman or citizen soldier if you're in the Army Guard. And so you do 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year. And in between that, you have a civilian job. So I'm at the Air Force Research Lab as the Senior IT Policy and Plans Enterprise Architect, which means I do a lot of meetings and paperwork. So
you saw the look on my face, man. That job title, Tony, messed me up. Then I'm trying to figure it out. But look, dude, you're an interesting guy. We're gonna jump into some stuff because of my background working with guys kind of like you, and you're gonna set me straight on really what it is right now.
Okay.
From that job and stuff. So I'm excited to hear about that. Now look, I'm just gonna get into it. We were talking before we started recording, and I got just drawn into your job title. And let me give you a little background. Of course, being in special ops for the biggest part of my career, from the Ranger Battalion to Green Berets, I worked with a lot of Air Force guys over the years. And when you talk about TAC and stuff like that, so my mind automatically went to, like when I was in the Ranger Battalion, we had Air Force guys assigned to the battalion headquarters, and they would jump in with us. They go to Ranger school, they were Ranger qualified, they did everything we did, but they had the big satellite communications radio. Yep. And when things got heated, we could jump in and just point to them guys. They would call fast movers in, A-10 Warthogs, or whatever we need, 53 helicopters or whatever. They were with us all the time. And so we could do that, but it was great to have an Air Force guy just to jump on his radio and do it. And so when you started saying what you did, I automatically went to that, but I guess that's not quite what you did.
Exactly.
Okay. Break it down to me what you did and kind of help me understand.
So tech controllers are different than combat controllers. Combat controllers are the guys that you would usually have call in all your people and call it the A10, right? They call it in hot and danger close and all that. Tech controllers, our job was to be able to do everything in comms, or if you're Army signal, but not be an expert at it. We had to do it in an expedited fashion. So most of our job revolved around setting up bare bones bases. So during the surge, we were setting up a lot of fobs. We were setting up a lot of different places. We had these giant sat dishes, but you only have so many people you can send into one location at the beginning, right? So once everything's cleared and we're good, our job is to get boots on the ground, get comms up in 72 hours for everybody to do operations. So if it was setting up servers, if it was setting up the big sat comms, if it was running fiber to get all of the cool stuff up and running, that was our job. As technology grew and changed and made things a little bit easier, we had a comms package is what we would call it. That shrunk down from 3 pallets to 2 pallets, and now it's barely half a pallet because technology has just kept growing. So they've slowly gotten rid of us, but some of us.
I want to make this civilian friendly for just a minute, because you said a lot and I understood everything you said, but I'm looking at my son. He probably understood nothing. So let me civilianize it, and I want you to continue right there.
Yeah.
So what Tony's basically saying, his job at first was when they went in, nothing's on the ground. Picture a desert or a building. They got to go in there and get everything set up just so people can talk to each other and communicate. When they get there, nothing's on the ground. It's just they get there and they set all this stuff up. And when he first got started, a pallet is a 4x4x4, and they may have several of those to do the job. And by the time I guess the end of his career, it's a half a pallet of equipment, and they can do everything they did with that and get everything set up and moving. And he can make all the calls, and people can come in and do their job. I had to civilianize that for the civilians. And it's funny, talking to vets every day on these calls. When you start getting to that, I understand it, but I'm looking at my son. He's like, I have no idea what they're talking about. So now we civilianize that. Continue with that story once you're on the ground.
There we go. So yeah, once your boots are on the ground, you get 72 hours to set up basic comms, right? So they can call back and reach back, and if you think about it, nobody's telepathic, right? They had that movie with George Clooney where back in the Vietnam area, they tried to get everybody to be psychic, and turns out we can't do that. But but we do have awesome technology, and our force is pretty amazing at what we can do. So to be able to get all of that stuff set up in 72 hours with a team that you practice day in, day out, and then after that 72 hours, you're good to go. You start establishing long-term comms. But slowly but surely, they we stopped setting up new bases. We've since pulled out of Afghanistan. We're not going anywhere new right now as of today, knock on wood. But they've transitioned a lot of us into different career paths now. Most of us are E7s or in that higher senior enlisted rank now. So we're not running and gunning like we used to. Our knees are a little bit shot here and there, and we're teaching new kids some of the old school tricks, but with newer technology.
Yeah, it's amazing, Tony, having this conversation. I'm flashing back. You joined the Air Force in 2002. I retired from the Army in 2000. So I've been retired going on this year, 22 years almost, right?
Wow.
And you're talking about communications. My brain goes back to when I was in Special Forces. We had what's called an 18 Echo SF communication specialist.
Yeah.
And one of my buddies was his dad. His name was Jorge Sanchez. And I can remember being in the middle of South American country. I think we're actually in Uruguay, in a rainstorm. And we had to get satellite communications up. And we had none of what y'all have today. And I can remember him turning to me and another buddy and saying, hey, and he's using Morse code. We got to go outside in pouring down rain. And he had already did the computation to pull this cord out, and you had to go so many meters this way, so many meters that way. The satellite radio was in the middle of these two basically cords, and he was going to sit in the middle of the rain and tack out the code to bounce off a satellite and go up and come down and get to the base at Fort Bragg.
Yep.
That's where we were. And so in the middle of this storm, I mean, I'm telling just like it was, he says, who's going to help me? I'm like, okay, I'll help you. I did not want to go out there and do that. and I was so impressed because of his skills as a radio operator. I mean, people don't understand, this is like no way you could get even a signal out pouring down monsoon in South America. And this dude had the skills to set that all up, figure all the computations out to bounce it off a satellite, and then do Morse code.
Yeah.
Tack it out on his leg. Tack, 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 tack. When I think of that, I said, people have no idea how brilliant people like Tony are to do. I mean, most civilians don't know. They don't have a clue. So when I'm talking to a guy like you, I understand your brilliance, brother. I'm like, people have they don't even understand what it takes to do what you guys did.
Well,
you can't say that, but I can.
I appreciate that. It's all, one of I'm just a dumb kid from Florida at the end of the day, right? The Air Force, a lot of people don't realize, the military in general, how is our training designed? It's designed to teach a young 18-year-old, 17-year-old, know-nothing person with a general aptitude, right. Meaning that they took the ASVAB and we know what they're naturally inclined to be good at. And every MOS, every ASC is designed to teach that person how to become an expert, from any walk of life. I heard once that the military is the hardest organization to become a part of, right? And it's harder than getting into college. And maybe not from an academic stance, but if you think about it, right, you have to have the physical requirements, you have to pass a basic mental capacity, and now you have to also have a personality that has the fortitude to allow yourself to be broken down and then rebuilt back up over and over again, right? Until you get that one widget that you have to spin 15 times, you have that spin 15 times perfect without even thinking about it. And a lot of people, we rib on each other, ground pounders, chair force, Marines eating boxes of crowns, Navy sitting on a boat, but and we got the Coast Guard now and Space Force, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what your job is. Like, it doesn't matter what walk of life you came from. You can go become an expert and then take those skill sets and apply them later on in life. My background, my father, I keep this picture on my desk to remind me. My father is originally from this small village in the Philippines, and
wow,
he during the Vietnam era, he joined the Air Force to become an American citizen, and went from being a guy in a village who had to hang your clothes with chickens running around and a banana tree in the middle there, in the Philippines, to being an avionics engineer.
Wow.
And wow. My mom was a SP or MP if you're Army in the Air Force, and that's how they met. And but she was, by all accounts, the stories that I've heard from her and my uncles, she was a rebellious, beautiful teen who, I was going to be a model, and she was a race queen model and stuff at the stock car races. And, and then she joined the Air Force and learned a skill set and a set of fortitude and mental strength. And now she's a business owner in Florida. She owns a telecommunications business. So it's not all running and gunning and shooting, and ultimately that's what we support. We support the defense of this nation, means necessary. But you can be from any walk of life, any part of this planet, and go become, an intelligent expert at a particular field. And I really just, it's something I like to explain when I'm in my mentorship programs to young people is, it doesn't matter what walk of life you had before. right? You can go become an expert and an intelligent person and then start a business, or, I'm in IT. I was a dumb kid to IT. I was a boxer and I wanted to be an actor and all of these things as a kid. I surfed like every weekend, I was partying, and then I never thought I'd be a network engineer at some point in my life.
Right,
Here,
right.
So
Crazy thing is, I wrote something down, man, and this is a tribute to you, your parents. When you start talking about being a military brat growing up, I've always said this: military brats, and I say that with love because I have a military right there. I'm looking at. To me, it's the smartest kids around because not only do you get, you're around so many different people. It's not like growing up in many parts of this country where only the white kids hang out together, only black kids hang out together. When you're a military brat, you're hanging out with a lot of different people from all walks of life and background. And your education with travel and seeing different things, it's just different from majority of people in this country. Talk about that, man, being with your dad doing 30 years in, and talk about the education. And a lot of times it may not be just the academia, but the education you got from growing up in that family with your mom and dad and what you were exposed to.
It was really different, and I think every military brat can as they become an adult in the civilian world, whether they join the military or not, they learn to appreciate the cultural diversity, right? Growing up, every kid in every school in America is told that America was a melting pot, and we had, the Statue of Liberty was this big symbol of coming to a great nation of multicultural, foundations. I wish that was true. I wish, that was true today. I wish it was true back then. But if we look at the reality of it, we've had issues with, cultural diversity and race diversity within American culture since the beginning. But military brats, we've only grown up in that idealism, right? I grew up for the first 10 years of my life in Okinawa, Japan. At Kadena Air Force Base. And we were fortunate enough to be able to be close enough to go visit my father's village in the Philippines and come back and visit other places. But I'm half Filipino and half Mexican. And I grew up in a household in Asia. And all of my friends were, mixed race kids, or, none of us thought any different about skin color or, cultural stigmas of, oh, well, that's because that person's black, or that's because that person's Mexican. I didn't know any of that. So when we first moved to the States, and it was like, I lived in Florida, and being half and having the last name somewhat, but my last name coming from my Filipino side and not growing up speaking Spanish, like, it was all of a sudden there was this weird sense of ostracization. We were different. And I would make friends with whoever would be friends, because that's what you grow up with. And you if somebody did something different than you've grown up as a military brat, families do things different.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's just an accepted, okay, I just accept it. It's just different. It's not bad. It's not good. It's just different. So growing up there and then suddenly coming to the States, it was culture shock of, what do you mean I can't be friends with that guy because he's black? What do you mean I can't be friends? I can't date you because I'm not Colombian. Like, those different things were just so polarizing to me. And now that I think about it out loud, probably really started like my quest, or this path that I'm on now with community service, because the idealism of the American dream, I think, is real. It is something that can happen. It is something that works, and I've seen it work on every military base. Not to say that we're exempt from racism, not to say that we're exempt from prejudice, because those things are deeply rooted in some people, and it's difficult to get out of people. But and I'm sure you can experience this as a veteran as well. You know, at the end of the day, we all bleed red. And that person standing next to me has got my back and I've got theirs. I don't care if, you know, whatever it was. And military brats grow up in that environment. And so, you know, it's something I wish everybody would be able to experience, because, you know, not everybody sees the beauty in what we are as Americans.
Wow, that's incredible, man. That's incredible. Let me jump in and say one thing on that.
Yeah.
I get it, brother. You know, I always tell people, being a black guy in the Ranger Battalion in the Green Berets. You know, I served in the Ranger Battalion from 600 people in the first bat. Only about 30 black guys in the whole battalion. And being a Green Beret serving in my company, I was the only black guy in the whole unit that was qualified out of over 100 guys. So I get it. What I tell people all the time is the great thing about what I learned was, you know, you got to be around people that think differently. And I laugh about it today because I was working out in my, you know, doing some exercise the other day. And I said, man, I want to hear the Eagles Hotel California. I listened to that because, you know, I was around some white guys that like the Eagles, and I listen to Guns N' Roses now because I didn't grow up with Guns N' Roses, but, you know, I was around white guys that like that. But I would play Earth, Wind and Fire and Stevie Wonder and you know, on those trips, and they would listen to that. So I grew up in my military career, having a love for some rock bands because of the guys I hung out with. And that's okay.
Yeah.
But if we don't hang out with each other, we get this thing in our mindset of, well, everybody's this way, everybody's that way. It's just not true, man. And it's just not true. And the great thing about, you know, having this conversation with you, and people that hear this and they'll see that, you know, I believe, yes, you know, we are a melting pot if we want to be. But if you don't want to be, you're not. And so it's true on that. Listen, man, I got to jump to something. Because, you know, what do they call you? What's your nickname over there, man, in the field of Superman or something? Because I'm seeing the hair. Hold on, son. I'm seeing the hair. I'm seeing the model type look. I got to get to the nickname and talk about how that came about and move us from that, and, you know, and this next step in your life. Give me some of that.
So I talk about my belief in the American idealism, right? And growing up as a kid of mixed race, and growing up, you know, having to move to America mainland and be away from military bases for a while, I did feel alone. And one of the things I got into was comic books, right? And so if you read the every origin story of Superman, it's essentially, you know, very similar to some biblical stories. If we want to talk about Moses, you know, his family sent him to a faraway place. He was raised by other people, and then he came back and you know, he tried to save the people in general, not just, you know, one particular person, but people who were ostracized. But he's an immigrant, and even though I wasn't born an immigrant, I felt like one. I was raised as one. And, you know, they recently changed the truth, justice, and the American way to truth, justice, and peace for all, right? And the betterment of kind. And so that character really stood with me most of my life. And it just so happened that everywhere I've grown up, so I've got the gel in right now, but this curl pops out since the day I was born. And I've always been told, like, you look like a Mexican Asian Superman.
Yeah.
I work out pretty hard. I train pretty regularly. And so the last deployment check, I decided I was going to get into this hobby called cosplay, where you dress up as cartoon characters, or, you know, your hero and stuff. And I don't have a picture with me right now, but if you guys go to my Instagram, you can usually see all the different events I'm doing and stuff. I dress up as Superman for charity. And it's a pretty legit suit. Some of you know deployment money is if you save it right, you end up with a lot when you come back, because you're not buying anything, right? When you're deployed, you're not paying for food, you're not paying for room and board, you know, you're not buying new clothes. Some people come back and they buy a Mustang. I came back and bought a custom fitted movie grade Superman costume.
Wow.
And so I go around, we do anti-bullying campaigns. We visit children's hospitals. We do the Comic Cons and stuff like that. And, I've, over the last couple of years, especially during COVID, have become New Mexico or Albuquerque Superman. And it is a humbling, wonderful experience because nobody sees a guy dressing up in a costume.
Yeah.
Everybody just sees Superman, which, if we go into the history and the lore of it, his entire persona is somebody who is just trying to do good, not because he can or he has powers or anything. It's just because it's what he was raised to believe is the right thing to do.
Wow.
And my father, my father grew up on a farm. My mom grew up on a farm, so those wholesome values of hard work and doing good and being polite, I don't think that they should be as rare as I think they are nowadays, but it is something I was raised with, and it's how I've always been. So
yeah,
that's how that came to be. So there's a lot of pictures of me in a skin tight suit with a cape and underwear on the outside, but it's a real fulfilling hobby that when you see those kids' faces light up, or sometimes it's the elderly, everybody knows Superman, right? And so it is just it's this great thing to do. In my
story,
spare time.
man. Give a story about maybe a kid that you went into the hospital and talked to, and they they felt a certain way, or just give us a couple of stories if you don't mind.
The most recent one wasn't at a hospital. We just had Albuquerque Comic Con this weekend, and actually no, this one's a little bit better. We had a charity event with, I forget the name of the charity right now, but it is on my Instagram, and it was an anti-bullying charity event is what it was. So a buddy of mine, he does Batman. There's a lady here in town, she does Wonder Woman, and so we had the Disney princesses there, and I'm Superman, and there was a little girl, who I guess she is like the biggest Superman fan in New Mexico, I guess. And so she shows up, and she couldn't be more than 4 years old. And her parents are there, and she just runs up and hugs my leg. And, just like, I was not a guy in a suit. I was Superman for her. And, she was just like, I can't believe you're here. All of these different things, like just coming out rapid fire, and you're just, it's hard sometimes to not choke up, and you have to explain, like, yeah, everything's going to be okay. But she left there. I think she came there, feeling, like, oh, I have to go to an event because I'm being bullied and my parents want me to come see a superhero. Like little kids don't like going to those things, when they're told that you have to go do something. And she left feeling empowered. And,
wow.
And just, it was the most, it's moments like that. There's another time where we were doing, Albuquerque has the first Friday. They open up all of downtown. They block off the roads. They let people sell art. They, people do, all sorts of different booths, and it's outdoors for COVID safety and everything. And so one of these first Fridays, I'm in the suit, and people think that you're trying to do it for money, and you're not taking any money, or anything like that. Some people do it, but use. And this old lady in her wheelchair, her daughter comes up and is just like, "Do you mind talking to my mother?" And I was like, "No, of course, I'll talk to your mother." And she was just like, I think she wasn't all there anymore, because she just, kept talking to me as if I was actually Superman. And,
Yes.
you know, it's the smile that you see on these people's faces. It brings hope, and it
Yeah.
brings the sense of joy. And,
Wow.
you know, it just, you know, if you can put a smile on somebody's face, I think you should.
Right.
And
You
yeah,
know, the funny part about that, as you're telling your story, for over 20 years, I've done prison ministry and character education programs. I actually got started back in 1998 volunteering.
yeah,
When one of my older sons was playing football, a little lady um, named Jean Jackson. I give her a name. She was a school counselor, and she looked at me one day and said, Terry, you're a black man. She's a little white lady about this big. She said, I know I'm black. She said, well, that's all I'm saying. There's a lot of kids at my school you could have a positive effect on. Can you come and talk to them? And I started volunteering, going to this school, Riley Road Elementary School, around Fayetteville, North Carolina. And as I was leaving one day, the same exact thing happened. A little boy grabs my left kneecap and looks up at me. These kindergarten kids and says, Coach Johnson, I love you. Now, at that time, I had my uniform on, big bag, green beret, E8. You talking about getting choked up. Yeah, a big knot comes in my throat. I said, well, I don't know his name. You know, little Johnny, I love you too. And I basically run out, and I would always stop and say, thank you for letting me come today, Miss Jackson, blah, blah, blah. Not that day.
yeah.
I ran and got in my vehicle and started driving and started crying like I was at a funeral, because I thought that may have been the first time this young man had a man showing him love that didn't want anything from him. And I got home that day and I told my wife, I said, baby, I have no idea. This was 1998, 2 years
Yeah.
before I retired. I said, I don't know what I'm going to do when I retire, but it's got to be something dealing with kids. Fast forward over 20 years later, we've talked to thousands of students, in schools and prisons and things, doing character education programs. So I get it, brother. When you go out there and do that, and this is the thing, I bet you right now, Tony, if I were to ask you who got more out of it, the kid or you can't, you don't know.
I don't know. Volunteering for me started off, my kid was in third grade, so I got a soon to be 14-year-old. And so my son was in third grade, and his PTA was about to be destroyed because they couldn't find anybody to run the PTA.
Wow.
And so when we think of the PTA, we don't think of dads becoming the president of the PTA, right?
No, we don't.
And so I was like, you know what? I've been, a night ops lead. I've done all of these things. I've led all of this other stuff. I could do PTA. I could sell cookies. And, I joined the PTA as their president. I got elected. And for 3 years, we did that. And that started that kind of community outreach for me. And then you start realizing these kids today, although we've made a lot of progress in, I believe, in a general speak, how we culturally handle or teach our children, we've made progress. It's some of that stigma is gone that I think we had when I was growing up, and I'm sure when you were growing up. But we're still failing them, and we're failing them in a sense of, if you go to a DoD school, we know there's teachers, we know that they're going to be good, we know that they're going to get a good education. If you go to a Title I civilian school, elementary school, there's kids that their only meal is at school, and there are teachers who are having to buy supplies for these kids because the school doesn't have money for them. And a teacher's salary, they retire at 70 a year. Like, if they max out here in New Mexico, that's not a lot of money. So, for them to do that was just heartbreaking. You find out organizations like the Parent Teacher Association, their motto is every child, one voice.
Mm.
And you start seeing these kids smile because Superman brought them a box of pencils.
Wow.
How can you
Wow.
not be motivated? you know, to take everything the military has taught us, you know, hardworking, motivated, dedicated, never ever to be outdone. That's because we're second to none, right? That's what basic training taught me. 20 years ago, I still remember that motto from my basic training flight, you know, and how can I not live that then, right? Because you got a kid happy that you got them a backpack, and not because their parents aren't trying. In some cases, you know, in some cases their parents are trying as hard as they can with what they've got. They sometimes they were dealt a bad hand, or they made a bad choice that now gives them very limited opportunity. And you know what you guys do with those kids, like you said, that's the first time that kid probably told, you know, saw a male role model and felt comfortable enough to say, I love you.
It changed my life. And, you know, and Miss Jean Jackson was the first one to get me to do that. And I communicate with her and write letters and stuff and tell her, man, it changed my life because she saw something in me. I was out coaching one of my son's football team and stuff in the community. So she saw what I was already doing, but I did not see basically that becoming my life and my career. Motivating, teaching. Now I've written and published 4 books, and now I travel and speak. And I didn't see that being my life when I retired. And that has become my life, you know. And so having a guy like yourself, I do want to shift, man, and ask the question. Because you're doing so much. Son got something. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You got something, son?
I wanted to just kind of reiterate and just share, man, you know, I appreciate what you're doing, Tony. I think it's funny that you mentioned, you know, being Albuquerque Superman and how you bring people hope. You know, for those who aren't familiar with DC and Superman, the sign on his chest means hope, right? And so you're doing that, and it's just so cool to hear kind of how you went from just your experience coming over to mainland and really kind of feeling the way you felt, but really taking that experience and making it into something amazing that helps so many people. And, you know, I mean, I think, you know, we're here, Combo with a Hero. It's just funny, you know, we talk to veterans, heroes, we talk to veterans who are just doing some really amazing things in the community, and you're literally being a hero to children. So, I appreciate it. My pleasure.
It's
awesome.
It's fascinating. I knew my son was going to jump on that because he is, you know, out of all my kids, he loves Spider-Man. He always has. And I think he's probably went to see the new movie 10 times already. I don't know, and trying to get me to go twice. He's seen the new movie at least twice, right? And you know, so yeah, I knew he would jump on that Superman thing for sure. But you know, even when he was a kid, he loved Spider-Man. He said, always has. So when you started telling that story, I'm like, I know somebody grown with a hook of Spider-Man's leg. I mean, you know.
Oh my God. Man, look, no, yes, sir. I love Spider-Man. I can't deny that. I love Spider-Man. No, but man, Tony, I had a question about something that you've mentioned a couple times.
Yeah.
And I want to hear more stories about your mentorship. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Like you said, you've been mentoring kids. Tell us about that.
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't mention how I got there. You know, so in the Air Force, we have a term called Bag Airmen. Okay. And when I was a young airman, I was part of a made up fraternity called Delta Beta Alpha, you know, Bag Airmen, because we were angsty 17 and 18, 19-year-old, you know, E3 mafia, you know, low ranking hooligans. And I was fortunate enough to have a series of mentors throughout my career recognize that they saw some form of potential in me, and they sometimes quite literally got me upside the head. Hey, you know, lead by example, right? And you see these problems, quit complaining about them and find a solution. And one of those mentors, he's chief now, Chris Jones. When I got stationed at Camp Zama at the tech control facility there, you know, immediately off the bat gave me the hardest working airman, you know, hardest to airman under my wing and he took me under his wing. And I went from being this guy who did good things and worked hard, but partied harder, to I had the distinct honor to being a Air Force Staff Sergeant, E5, in charge of Army Japan's Honor Guard. Wow. So in charge, I was color sergeant. I was NCOIC of Army Japan's Honor Guard for 2.5 years.
That's impressive, brother.
And that was through the direct leadership and mentorship of Chris Jones. And what I had learned was there is a difference between mentoring and dictating, right? You can go to anybody and tell them, look, save 20% of your funds, your income, and invest it in a CD, and that'll grow. And you need to do this now. Versus, hey, what are your goals? What are your plans to do? How do you plan to get there? Let's work on a plan together, and you give them ownership and you have them think things through. So he did that with everything regarding my Air Force career at that period of time. And that's also when I went to Afghanistan, and I adopted it very early on in my time in Afghanistan, his leadership style of, let's ask the questions, right? Hey boss, I need to do this. Okay. Are you sure you need to do that? Why do you need to do that? How did you come to this conclusion? Is there a better opportunity for us? And then, you ask your troops those questions, and it gets them thinking instead of just doing what they were told, which is what we're taught to do. It gets them thinking, okay, cool. I understand why I have to get this now. And so when I left active duty, we started these different, there's a lot of different mentorship programs that you have here in Albuquerque. And one of them is a young Asian American group that I get to hang out with from time to time. And, through that, I've gotten to mentor quite a few different individuals. And you start this path of, just somebody has no idea what they want to do, but I'm now that guy recognizing these people have potential. And I like the word people, not kids, right? Because they're not children, right? An 18-year-old is not a child, but they're not fully developed. But, our male brains don't stop developing, I think, until 25 is what they figured out recently. And thank goodness I didn't do anything irreparable before 25. But, you start talking to them, and it's like, okay, great. Like, you have the potential to be something, but because of social status stigmas, cultural stigmas, they have gotten it in their heads somehow or another that they cannot. So you start, okay, great. What is it you want to do? Well, I don't know what I want to do. Well, no, you got to do something. Like, do you want to play video games? Like, do you want to be a professional gamer? Yeah. Do you want to be an artist? Do you want to be a business owner? I don't know what I can do. Well, let's go find out, right? And I don't necessarily lead them to the military. It did well for me, but it might not do well for others. But I do try to lead them down a path that leaves that as an open opportunity with full transparency. And I'm one of my friends, her sons, he had saw Jarhead and wanted to become a Marine. And not that there's anything wrong with being a Marine, but I was like, hey man, like, why do you want to be a Marine? He's like, well, because their uniform's cool. I was like, all right, well, that's fair. They have the coolest looking uniform out of the whole service. They do look pretty amazing. But what do you want to do after? What do you mean? I was like, let me ask you a question that I was asked once upon a time when I almost joined the Marines and I almost joined the Army, and because I wanted to be different than my old man. When you're done with everything, what are you going to go do when you go in? And when you're done with everything, what do you want to be? Well, I want to be a photographer. Okay, well, maybe the Marines aren't the right path for you. Like, do you want to learn a trade? Well, what's a trade? Like, okay, they don't have shop class no more. Maybe you could be a plumber, and plumbing can pay for your hobby to be a photographer. And then you can build that into being a photographer. long story short, the kid's name is Asante, ends up not going active duty. He joins the Air National Guard here, unbeknownst to me. Just through our talks, we would have lunches when he was in high school, and we kind of fell off because I left that organization to go work with Lockheed Martin for a little bit, and he graduated high school. He joins the Air National Guard, and I see him during a drill weekend, and I'm like, Asante, what are you doing here? He's like, well, all of our talks, I joined the Air National Guard. I'm with the Red Horse Squadron, which they do expedited, expeditious deployed, construction scenarios and stuff. They go build houses where there are no houses. They go build buildings at bare bones bases. They do humanitarian missions. And I was like, oh, great, man. Like, that's amazing. And he was like, yeah, I'm a plumber. And I was like, really? He's like, well, I listened to what you said when I was in school. And I, if I can be a plumber, I can be a plumber anywhere. That's not ever going to be a job that goes away. It pays really well if you join a union and you become, I forget what the position is after apprenticeship, but a journey, and now he took that, invested his money properly, and he has his own photography and filmography business.
Wow.
Yeah, he left the Air National Guard 2 years ago, I think, to go move to Colorado Springs full time. And he films like car races, and that full-time gig is he just does modeling photos and car photos and videos. And he's got the big, rig that sits on with the gimbal and everything, and doing great.
Wow. You said something. I know we're probably getting close to wrapping up, but you did say something I want to go back to. Mentoring kids for over 20 years, it does pain me when I meet a young person. I ask them, what's your goal? What do you want to become? And they don't have one.
Yeah.
I'm like you. I don't care if he tells me, hey, man, I want to box, or I want to do something. Like, how can you be living at 14, 15, 16, 17 and not even have a goal of what you want to become?
Yeah.
And it's one of the things I've been dealing with now with, with COVID. We literally just got back to schools November, December 2021, so literally we were out of schools for 2 years physically talking to kids, and we just got back in there. But man, being able to sit down with that young man and talk to him, and the value you brought to him as a mentor, I just want to, man, applaud and say thank you for that, because dude, you changed that young man's life, and not just his life, his kids' life, because the seed that you put in there and somebody else will water it, and it's biblical. But man, I'm telling you, thank you for doing that, brother, because that's amazing.
That's what we should be doing, right? My father was a strong reminder before he passed almost 20 years ago now, that the village, isn't one person, right? It is a community. And, Mabalacat, where the village, it's now a city, but where my father was from, I remember being—
What's the name of it again? You said it fast.
Oh, Mabalacat. Yeah. The Filipinos are going to be upset because I didn't say it with an accent. So, I remember being a 5-year-old boy, and one of my chores was my dad would come with what we call a balak bayan box. It's a box of gifts and goodies from overseas, right? And he would always bring this big crate of Spam. And I was 5 years old, and I would take my little wagon and I would go up and down and give everybody Spam in the village. That was my chore. That is what we should be doing as a community. And it doesn't matter how big that community gets, no matter how different we think we all are. I'm not saying give everybody something for free, but what I'm saying is we need to support each other and the next generation, because, when I'm in a wheelchair one day, right, I can't move, who's going to be left running things?
Yeah.
Right. And if I did not leave that great example, like if we didn't do that great example, right, of being a respectful person, and, you know, from a masculine standpoint, showing young men that machismo isn't everything, right? And actions speak louder than words. You know, then what have we done? We're setting everybody up for failure.
Yeah. Oh, that's good stuff, son. I'm gonna kind of kick it to my son. I'm loving Tony. Look, bro, this is phenomenal, brother. I am loving this. Like I always say, definitely get a guy like you with so much information and charisma, and you got a lot of juice, brother. I said you got a lot of juice coming through the video. I love it. You know, you could go 10 hours, but I'm gonna kick it to my son and let him start kind of wrapping up. But this has been phenomenal, brother. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you, guys. You're very welcome.
Man, absolutely. Tony, man, you've shared just some amazing stuff you've already done. I mean, you've already just created set some great groundwork in a lot of people's lives and really just made a big impact in your life. And you know, I think one thing that the question that we always ask at the end of these interviews, you know, with Combos of Heroes is, you know, when your life is over, what do you want people to remember you for? Can you answer that question for us?
It's going to sound a little grim, but I understand that you know, out of the grand scheme of the universe, I am a microscopic dot. And so I don't expect or want to be remembered for anything. If I am remembered for anything, I don't necessarily want it to be associated to my name. I would much rather have goodwill and the capacity for good that all humankind shares to be strengthened and bolstered. And to know that at the end of the day, the kindness I shared was compounded, and, you know, 5 more people were kind, and then 5 more people were kind from each of those 5 people, and that the world was a better place, not because of me, but because of the kindness that other people showed me.
Wow. Phenomenal, brother.
Man, Tony, thank you so much. That is amazing. Man. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for sharing your story, for giving us your time, and man, for all that you've been able to do down in Albuquerque Superman. Thanks again, Tony.
No, thank you, guys.
Yes, sir. Our pleasure. All right. Well, I'll go ahead and pass over to my dad to go ahead and close us out.
All right, everybody, you know how I got to close this video out. This is Ranger Johnson. We're just finishing up on Convos with Heroes with the great American hero, Tony Joe Zamora. And let me tell you, he's done a phenomenal job. But you know how I got to close out this conversation. This is Ranger Johnson telling you to stay in the fight.